Happy New Year, everybody. This is Alton Avenue. Welcome to Underrated Movies. And I'm here to talk about my top 10 films of the year. And Happy New Year. You know, I just found out this morning, and not starting off with bad news for the first day of the year. Um, there's a big ass earthquake that just happened in Japan. And man, um, kind of just randomly you wake up on the first day of the year and you already hear about bad news into the world. But hey, let's not try to go there. Um, but here, this is going to be my top 10 movies of the year that I'm going to list. I know I'm like a couple days late, but you know what? Hell, I still want to make the effort to get out my list out to you guys and just to let you know my thoughts about the films that I've seen briefly. And there's some pretty good films that I've seen that just didn't make the top 10, and I won't mention those. I won't even really mention any honorable mentions. Uh, but it's hard to believe. But I'll give you a hint. What my number one film is before, and it's a A24 film. Which last year, another A24 film was my favorite. The year before that, it was an anime called Evangelion. I can't believe it's been almost 2 years since I've seen it. But, you know, I had the DVD for that film. But without delay, let's go ahead and start with my 10 film that I considered the best of last year. Killers of the Flower Moon, which was directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro, and Leonardo DiCaprio. And for those who don't know, that is a Paramount Apple film that deals with set in the 1920s. It's like a Western crime gangster film, and it deals with some true story elements of people making money off the Indians when they discovered oil, and the idea was to integrate into their bloodline and steal their money, which is effed up, very effed up. It's a very dark story. It is long, but I think the story and the characters are so immersed. You kind of, at least for me, that it kind of flew by. It didn't feel like it was 3 hours and 20 minutes. It felt, I don't know. I mean, it felt long, but it didn't feel. I didn't necessarily feel the length because the story was so interesting. DiCaprio, I think he plays one of his most despicable characters that he's ever done in film. Um, and it's interesting with this character. You can kind of see the long moral dilemma that he's constantly having to deal with and being a part of that situation. uh, to slowly kind of seeing him finally have a guilty conscience, which that doesn't happen till the end, but eventually gets there. They kind of see that. Um, in the trailer, it's funny. The trailer, I think it's a little bit misleading a bit, but I remember that last trailer. You kind of don't know the way they were advertising that he was a bad guy because he is. For those who haven't seen the film, I highly encourage you to see the movie if you could withstand the length of it. I thought it was pretty good. It was very very good film. It's a very different epic that I've seen. And what hits number nine, and I think it's an underrated film of last year that kind of got a little bit hype, and I think there was some bizarre uniqueness from the trailer that just came out. This one's also supposedly based on a true event, but I think the chunk of it's exaggerated. And it's another comedy. Cocaine Bear, directed by Elizabeth Banks. and it stars uh forgot the actor's name, but he played Solo. Uh, is it Trevay Jackson, the uh, Ice Cube's son. Ice Cube's son. I think that's who he is. And then Ray Walata, which that was his last film that he appeared in. And it's a story about, well, some drug dealers who have to find their missing bag of yellow bag after it missed their transportation where they were supposed to drop. And it turns out that a bear consumed it and is wreaking havoc all over the townspeople, at least the localies. And that movie's hilarious. It's horrific with the violence, and the gore is just top notch. And I'm telling you guys, if you haven't checked this out, if you missed it, you missed out on a good comedy. This film was just bonkers crazy, and I loved it. I just loved the absurdity, and then I think this is Elizabeth Banks' third feature film, and I could tell you this was a film she was just having fun with it, and she really nailed it on the part. And so far, this is her best work. Uh, and that's her approach with dark comedies. Dang, girl, keep going. It's like this film was just an enjoyment, and I could not stop laughing throughout the whole film. And then there's some pretty amazing, just off the wall sequences here, and it's just hilarious. Man, I wish I saw this with my folks just to see their reaction because this movie was just too damn funny to miss. What hits at number eight is Sounds of Freedom. Uh, I'm not going to pronounce the director's name, but I do know it's Alejandro Carlos something. I'm sorry. Uh, Starring Jim Caviezel, based on the true story of Tim Ballard, who supposedly rescued um, children that were in some pretty bad situations with trafficking. And what really amazed me about this film was pretty much of the production value of it. I think the budget was barely under 20 mil, and it's a beautiful looking film. It's a hard watch for a PG-13 film. What I thought was misleading that they advertised this as an action film, and don't get me wrong, I didn't expect it to be action heavy, but more story driven, and you literally see this guy going through lengths, going through conflicts and challenges of him trying to find these missing children. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking what you see. There were moments in the film, even if it's a PG-13. I was kind of it was uncomfortable. There were just sequences, and then the film develops a good idea of putting a good uh, way of putting that dark idea into your head. And the bad guys in this film, you just want every bad thing happen to them, and you're just rooting. And it's rare to have at least for me, at least for one of the, I guess, thrillers of the year. This is the film where you're really rooting for the protagonist to really do some justice. Because at towards the end, when he does finally rescue, there is a build-up suspense sequence there, and it's jaw-droppingly intense and very rewarding. Uh, I loved what they were able to do, and I'm actually glad this was more of a drama than your Hollywoodized action film. I'm glad they because it kept it on a realistic level and it kept it very grounded. Um, Another film that's hard to watch, but it's a very important film, and I'm glad that that film struck some awareness of what's going on into the world. Um, what hits number seven for me is Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's biopic epic, and I love the filmmaking, the performances here. This is probably Killian Murphy's best film for me. I don't know about Chris Nolan's best movie, but this film was very, very, very intriguing, and to learn and I love the way that Nolan portrays Oppenheimer's psyche, that he realized he created a very bad thing, and he gave the keys to humanity. And you see the horror, and I love the psychological horror that he goes through, deals with it, and then because any given moment we could obliterate our own kind. And I get the vibe that they compare this to a horror film because that's a real life horror thing to really think about, that we have the power to obliterate, to eradicate our own species at any given moment, and you don't know. And you don't know. So I do hope, the film does get a lot of Oscars, and I'm rooting for Nolan, um, for his chance to possibly win Best Director. Maybe Oppenheimer for Best Picture. Okay, what hits number five for me was the recent film that I've seen. A24 is The Iron Claw. It's a biopic story, another biopic story. Actually, no, 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 wait. I'm gonna flip it around. I forgot this movie. What hits number six is Infinity Pool. That movie came out earlier of the year. Uh, it's a horror, science fiction, psychological film, and it's very different. It's about a couple that go on vacation somewhere in Greek, and they come across a girl who are actually rich, weird serial killers, and they go on this weird rut when they get involved with this program that gives you the ability to clone yourself, and you can substitute that for false or fake executions to do any evil wrongdoings. That's kind of how the film goes. So you have this guy who goes to who accidentally murders somebody by accident, and then they get the option to, hey man, we can clone you and have your clone get executed, and you can go about your day and forget about it. We just can't leave. But then they get involved with these crazy people, these rich people, and they pay off these medical people that are able to clone, to generate clones. They go out wreaking havoc, starting trouble, doing weird, crazy crap. And it's interesting that the film to see that, and the main character gets so invested and intrigued and interested with the with this experience. It's like he's going to some sort of weird odyssey, and plus the character in the start of the film, he's like bored of his life, but to see this weird journey that he goes through, which is terrifying, disturbing at the same time. And Mia Goth, she plays beautiful, but she's also crazy in this movie. To see that in this film, and you kind of don't know where this film is going, I think it is one of the best horror films that came out this year, and it's very unpredictable. I highly recommend it. It's very different. The next is the Iron Claw. That's a story about the Von Ayers family and wrestling teams who went through constant tragedies for years. And I won't really say much about that. And this is a very heavy drama, and it's like imagine this, where you rise up to a certain height, and then you just fall into a series of unfortunate events that just put you down further and further away. It's actually it's my I have like two favorite parts of the film. Is kind of leaning towards the end, and I don't want to really explain too much about it. It does deal with something spiritual. The film feels very biblical as well prior to watching this film, and it's it's a very tragic story. And I think it's a film. I think when you do leave the theater watching this film, or whenever you get a chance to, I do think you're gonna really appreciate your bond with your family and your siblings. Um, and the film has a lot to say. Next, number four is John Wick, Chapter 4. It would have been higher, but it just there were just other movies out there that just kind of just I just liked it a little bit more. This film is the best John Wick film, and I like that they explored more characters and gave them more of a shine than just have John Wick constantly just chronicling through his ways. They topped everything in every level from the previous films, and I loved it. I loved it. This is like a near perfect. I think this is like one of the best action films I've seen. And it reminds me of like Mad Max Fury Road, where it constantly just kept going and did not let up, and there was always something new. I mean, the ending was a little bit underwhelming. I ain't gonna lie to you, but that's just a little nitpick. But aside that, this film was just amazing, and I had a great time with this film. The next film, hits number three, is The Killer, David Fincher's first action film. Finally, one of those dudes gonna do an action movie. And this is a very different kind of action film, and I like how the film it's a version of that if it's kind of a story. The story is kind of simple, but it's a film where you're witnessing events through a character's perspective, and not everything gets revealed to you, only through the perspective of the character. So when things kind of happen, you kind of just have to take in what is happening and have the character kind of just interact with it while he psychologically figures out how to deal with it. What I really love is the contradictions of how this dude's so calculated and tries to be cold, but then when things do have setbacks, it's all in panic mode. And I like that contradiction that this film has. It has one of the best fight scenes of last year, and probably one of the most intense fight scenes from any action film that I've seen in a long time. Probably one of the best because that's what I like. It was brutal. It was intense, and there was a horror kind of vibe to it. And I like that this action scene felt kind of scary because it's a scary moment. This is an action movie, a very different one. Really, the film only has like maybe two action scenes. I'm hesitant to say two because really that fight scene is really the highlight of the movie. And the ending's very different. Like it's a film that subverts expectations a lot, and I loved it. Um, Number two is Godzilla minus one, and all I say is, yeah, I will say it is one of the best Godzilla films ever made, and it's a monster film that in a long while, I guess since Cloverfield or since like a big budget movie, but this film's like 15 million. I ain't gonna say that. There's a to have the effects look that good and to have a presence of intensity and fear during action sequences with CGI filled up, but you still felt fear from these moments of action. And that's what I applaud about this film. It felt very old school monster movie. Like I felt like a kid again watching just being amazed by seeing something big, um, taking you from beyond your imagination, just being amazed in awe of what you're seeing. Wanting to learn more and explore. That's just I'm expressing feelings about it. This movie brought back that nostalgic feeling of why um, I go to the movies is to be amazed in awe, a spectacle. This film felt like a spectacle, um, and it was amazing. And honestly, when the movie was over, I wanted to sit there and rewatch it again and just sneak in and see a second time. And I really got to get my dad to watch this movie because it's like, because I tell him like, "Hey, dude, Godzilla's on." It's like, "Hey, man, like he likes Godzilla, but then I guess years back, I guess there's just certain of them he just can't rewatch because he just finds them boring. Um, but he does like Creature. He's the one who actually got me into Godzilla. Man, I don't know if I'm gonna get him to watch the black and white version. I don't think he's gonna want to sit through that, but uh, maybe I could just find a way to rent it, or if it comes on Netflix, which I'm sure it will. I'm setting his behind down, telling him like we gotta watch this. I don't care if I have to. I don't care if I'm working one day and I'm literally driving straight home, to his house and tell him like, hey, we have to watch this today. Because that's how good this movie is. And number one, it's a film that actually I couldn't stop thinking about since I saw it. Ari Aster's Bo's Afraid. Told you it was 824 pounds. And this film was weird, but it was so funny. It was so funny. It's so unpredictable. And the trailer sells you off in the basic idea what the movie is. You're in for a wild ride. Um, and it's 3 hours. The film didn't feel like 3 hours, but it just kept you interested in what was going on. And it's a bold and ballsy film, and it's an original piece. And it's fortunate this film just tanked so bad that, I think just people just couldn't figure out or relate to what was being translated on image and trailer, I guess. It's basically it's just a story about a guy who's going to see his mom. Um, who's the guy is very kind of intimidated by her, but do you understand reasons why? There was a good video I watched of this guy analyzing the film about how Bo has been demasculated by his mom for years, and the film, and it makes sense. It's a metaphor of how men, or at least people, can sometimes be brainwashed into feeling less about themselves, being fearful of the world by their parents. Because in the film, the mom is portrayed to be a very controlling person and has somewhat sheltered him away from experiencing any possibilities of a normal life. But then I think the film kind of draws a line between balancing out being protective and being over controlling. And there's a folk tale kind of vibe from this film. It felt like a book, like you're reading like a folk tale, dark book that you like picked up at the library during elementary school. And the film doesn't explain a lot. I think it's through the reality, exaggerated reality through both perspective. But then there's things that happen in the film that feels very supernatural that I just can't fathom. That there's some spiritualness that goes on into the film, but they don't explain it because there's something that happens into the film later into the third act that's just completely bonkers and it feels very fantasy. Uh, and I'm glad that the movie just went through just lanes of doing shit and just didn't care. I wonder if that's Martin Scorsese's favorite film because I guess he loved it. I loved it. I like. I know it's a film that not everybody will like. Not everyone will like it, and I think that's what kept it interesting for me. That it's a film that will, till this day, and I think for years to come, I think will be like a cult classic, but will split people upon viewing us. And this is only back in April. Time flies, man. Wow. Um, I gotta make some changes this year. But that's my top 10 movies of 2023. How about you? Do any of these films meet your list of last year? If so, let me know in the comments section and let me know what is your favorite underrated movie.